Alright, so today we are making my clean eating chocolate chip cookies. They are based on spelt flour, and so it's actually one of the few dessert recipes that aren't gluten-free. But it's a nice flour. Like if you aren't gluten sensitive, then definitely this is a great option for a treat, but still have it a bit more nutritious. I'm actually using a sprouted spelt flour, but just regular spelt flour works. And this is like a whole grain flour. So you could also substitute for sure whole wheat flour, white whole wheat flour. If you have like any other wheat varieties. Spelt is actually just a form of wheat. I think it's just a bit more, it's like an older grain, an older variety. And it's very nice. I like to make bread from it, and today we're making cookies as well. But we are going to start with the sweetener actually. I'm using unrefined cane sugar today because I realized that I was out of coconut sugar. Either one would work. Like a less refined sweetener that's granulated. Coconut sugar is usually my first preference, but this one is like, what do you call it? Muscovado. It's like how they call it here in Mexico. It's kind of like brown sugar, but most brown sugar in North America, it's actually white sugar, like really refined white sugar that has some of the molasses added back in, whereas Muscovado is just a less refined version of sugar. So I like to use that as well for baking. So this is a 3/4 cup of the sweetener, of the granulated sweetener. And we'll mix this with coconut oil as our fat for these cookies instead of butter. So they're dairy free. And you can see this is like partially melted. I again stuck this coconut oil jar, because it's made from glass, into my oven because I'm preheating it right now for baking the cookies. So that's why I can easily pour it out. Otherwise you may need to melt the coconut oil separately. So this is a 1/2 cup of coconut oil. Mix these up real quick. And now we are adding an egg. Just a large egg. And vanilla. And that's it already for the liquid ingredients for this recipe. It's a really easy recipe, including chocolate chip. I think there's 8 ingredients, and it really takes almost no time at all to stir this all together. So this is a 1.5 teaspoons of vanilla extract, and I'm combining all the ingredients here. All the wet ingredients, and then I can just add the dry ingredients on top. There's no need to separately mix the wet and dry ingredients for this one. It works, it's just fine to make it all in one bowl. And fewer dishes is always a win in my books, for sure. Alright, so now it's time for the flour. We need 1.5 cups of spelt flour. And like I've mentioned before, when I'm measuring flours, I don't dip the measuring spoon into the flour. I use another spoon to kind of spoon it in, because if you dip, you compress the flour and you end up with way too much. That's kind of how you would end up with 2 dry cookies. So this was 1 cup, so I'm just going to use the same measuring cup and only fill it up to about the halfway mark. Next up, we need baking soda, and I'm only using baking soda, no baking powder in this recipe. And they come out beautifully. There's no need for baking powder. So this is 1 teaspoon of baking soda, and this 1/4 teaspoon of salt. I'm using Himalayan pink sea salt. Now this is already it for the kind of dry ingredients. The only thing missing now are chocolate chips, but we'll add those in the end. Now I'll just make sure all this is combined before I add the chocolate chips. And you could use a hand mixer if you prefer, but just a spatula or wooden spoon is totally fine to whip up the cookie dough. Okay, let me show you. So this is kind of what it looks like when it's all done. We need chocolate chips now. 3/4 cups of chocolate chips. And for the chocolate chips, like I've mentioned before, I like to use Enjoy Life brand. They are top allergy free. They are dairy free, soy free, nut free of course, and the sweetener they use is brown sugar. So I like to think that's a little bit better. And I like to use the dark variety, like dark chocolate chips. Semi-sweet or milk chocolate just is kind of too sweet for me. This is what the dough looks like now. It's still a bit sticky liquidy, and that's because we used coconut oil that was melted. But that's not a problem. We are going to actually chill the dough. And you can chill it like this for a little bit before scooping. But what I actually like to do is scoop out the cookie dough now onto a plate and then chill the dough bits like this, kind of dough balls. And because it's kind of easier to scoop like this than when you have a very chilled hard dough. And if you put like a piece of parchment paper or like a baking mat underneath, that actually would be better. But mine is in use right now, and I'll show you in a second why. I'm using, I think what this would be a medium cookie scoop. And with that size, I get about 12 to 14 cookies from this dough. If you use a bigger one, you probably have fewer cookies. And if you prefer making mini cookies, you can of course use a small cookie scoop as well. All right. This is how far I'm going to do it now. I'm going to add this into the fridge. And in the fridge, you would need to let this chill an hour or two, but a quick way to do it is to actually add them to the freezer. And in the freezer, it will take only about 20 minutes. So if you are in a rush to get your cookies, just chill the dough in the freezer really quick. And I actually am prepared today. I made the same cookie dough yesterday, last night. And here are my chilled cookie dough balls, like this. And I'm just going to show you how I just pop them on a baking sheet. Like a regular size baking sheet, I only add 6 cookies, about 6 cookies at a time. Maybe 8 would work. Yeah, let's try 8. I guess I have 8 right now. And I'm going to bake them like this, whoops, for 8 to 10 minutes, about that, at 350 Fahrenheit. Let me set a timer, because I always forget when I have stuff in the oven. I think I would remember, but I don't actually do. I usually get distracted doing other stuff. But we actually don't need to talk for 8 minutes, because I am really prepared today. I actually baked some of the cookie dough that I prepared ahead, and this is kind of what they come out as when they're done. Let me see if I can go a bit closer. That will show them. So I just baked these really fresh about half an hour ago. I let them cool on the cookie sheet for about 10 minutes, because you don't want to bake them until they're like fully set. I like just the outside edges to be set, and the centers can still be soft and seem a little bit underbaked. At that point, I take them out and then let them cool down first on the cookie sheet for about 10 minutes. So that will let them set up a little bit. They will actually keep cooking on the cookie sheet. And then after 10 minutes, they are usually set enough that I can transfer them with a spatula onto a cooling tray like this. And then this is where I let them cool until I'm ready to eat them. And there we go. They're like a little crispy on the outside, nice and chewy on the inside. I'm gonna have a bite now. This is exactly how I like my cookies. With that chewiness in the center, with the crispy texture contrast on the outside. And these make perfect snacks or dessert. With coffee, of course. I will make some coffee to finish this cookie. And to store them, you can leave them at room temperature for a few days. If you want to make them ahead, you could also add them to a Ziploc bag and freeze them baked, or freeze the cookie dough balls and bake them up fresh whenever you need them. I hope you make this recipe. Thanks so much for joining. See you next week. Bye.